right, Victorum Gaming fans and SPQR fans, we're back. We're starting a new series of videos for the game here, and this series is going to basically cover all the different scenarios available in the game. So we're going to start with the generic ones, but then we're going to work through each faction's special missions as well, and kind of provide a quick overview of the mission and some basic like ideas and strategies that you should probably try and follow just to have success with them. Some of the missions are definitely a little bit more complicated than the others. Not everything is just a simple, kill the opposing force and line up directly in front of them kind of a deal. So definitely is worth knowing what each mission is requiring of you and going from there. So now, the game doesn't necessarily specify what size of table to play on, and it really depends on the size of game, too. But for a lot of these, if the forces aren't too big, a 4x4 certainly makes sense and could easily work. But as the forces grow bigger, you probably want to migrate to something like a 6x4, or if you're playing like a gigantic game, even something like an 8x4. I would probably say, unless it's a very small little skirmish, like a 3x3 is probably not going to cut it. But, I mean, to whatever works for you, basically. So there's, again, nothing necessarily set in stone, but overall, I would say a 4x4 is probably a good bet for a lot of your games. So the generic scenarios that they give you, so you have a couple different options. You can roll for it, or I think they even let you choose for it, choose what you want to play too. But depending on what kind of campaign you're playing, or if you're just deciding to play heads up or like a tournament, even there's different things to consider there and how those are selected. But we're going to kind of just cover them in order here. So the generic ones they give you are called Border Invasion, Livestock, Occupy Sacred Ground, Sacking the Village, Fall of Heroes, and Caravan, and they're definitely very different missions. So again, not everything is just a simple line up, charge each other, and whoever's left standing at the end is the winner. So we'll start off with Border Invasion, and we'll kind of work our way through there, and then for this video specifically, we'll be just doing the generic missions, and then other videos will cover each faction basically separately in each video. So moving on then. So we got Border Invasion. So pretty simple scenario to start off with. This is actually basically just kill the opposing side. So on the warband side here, again, both players have warbands of equal denarii in this battle, and neither is considered to be an attacker. So again, there are certain things that matter if you are the attacker, although ironically they show a attacker and defender down there, but we'll ignore that for the moment. Yeah, like I said, there's, I think, like certain talents and other special rules that kick in if you're the attacker or the defender and stuff like that, but it does not apply here. So as far as setup goes, both players roll a dice, the lowest deploying all his models first in his deployment zone, the highest deploying all his models second. Both players roll a dice. The player who rolls the highest takes the first phase of the game. So for that initiative system that the game uses. So couple things to consider there. So definitely worth, by and large, trying to put your models down second. If you can see where the opponent gets to put their whole army, that definitely gives you an advantage there. So winning that roll can be pretty important. So if you do have to put all your stuff down first, again, it's worth considering how the table's set up, what you're playing, what your opponent's playing, and trying to then mitigate any advantages that you can already see that they have over you, and deploying in a way that basically doesn't leave you vulnerable right away or things like that. So, and you gotta factor in where you're going to be several turns down the road and what you actually want to accomplish, and really what the opponent's army is capable of too. So definitely a little bit more pressure on the player putting all their stuff down first. Now again, if you get to watch your opponent do all of his or her deployment first, you definitely get to see what they've kind of game planned, and again, kind of the reverse of what I was just talking about, but know what your army's capable of, know what they're capable of, and try to deploy depending on what's going on. If you are a force that's more geared towards sitting back and letting the enemy come to you and then kind of whittling them down, you might consider that in your deployment. If you're got more of a cavalry force, need to flank, where's the best spot's going to be for that. How is the table set up? Again, all these little factors to consider there. But again, if you're by and large, if you're getting to deploy second after you've seen what the opponent does, you already got like a little bit of a leg up there. Now that being said, you still roll another dice there to see who actually takes the first phase of the game. So some of that can be mitigated. Just because you deployed second doesn't necessarily mean you're playing second. You could actually be going first too. So it's kind of like a potential double advantage there. So, and again, there's various talents that let you modify those rolls and stuff like that. So again, another little layer of things to consider. And then special rules for the scenario, there's none. So it's basically, again, just a heads up battle. And then victory conditions. The fight continues until all the models in one of the warbands have been completely removed from the table, either through injury or failure of will to fight. The remaining warband is the victor. So it doesn't give you any like turn limit or anything like that. Again, if you're playing in like a tournament or something, there you probably will have a turn limit or at least a time limit imposed on you. So and they might modify those victory conditions just a little bit, just because it isn't necessarily always easy to remove every last model from the opponent from the table. But that's where like a smaller table can also help too. So something like a 4x4 again, so you don't have to chase opposing models all over the place. If it's a smaller game to begin with, you again probably don't need to be playing on something like a 6x4. Now the setup here, again, the terrain is really just as a reference, but the attacker has a little bit of a zone there, so basically 6 inches from the table sides, and then the two forces have to be at least 18 inches apart. So now worth considering here, if you put your forces as far forward as possible, as we've seen with the various like talent combinations for things like cavalry, but even infantry, and other unit specials and stuff like that, first turn charges are certainly possible. So you definitely want to be careful of deploying as far forward as possible. So again, look at what the enemy has available, what they can do, and just keep that in mind. You might think you have a really good deployment, and then suddenly you're being charged on turn 1, and a unit gets wiped out or something, and your whole game plan goes to hell. So definitely something to consider there. And again, making good use of terrain is also important there. So not every table really should be like just a wide open field either. But that's more of a personal preference. Some people do prefer less terrain and just getting all their models across the board like that, but a little bit more terrain I feel adds a little bit more of an interesting layer to that. So beyond that, there's not too much to say for the mission. So it's just a straight up fight by and large. Again, you might want to modify the victory conditions a little bit. Not everybody's always going to make it easy to kill off every last model, and it can feel pretty annoying if say like you reach a agreed upon time limit or something, and you basically beat your opponent, but they've decided to run and hide with a unit or something like that, and technically, as it's written here, that wouldn't count as a victory. So you might again modify the victory conditions a little bit, but more or less this is just a straight up fight. So definitely a good beginning mission to sort of cut your teeth on and learn some things about how your army plays and how to deal with opposing armies and heroes and stuff like that. So yeah, certainly a good practice mission, but also works as just a solid mission in and of itself. So in the next part of the video, we'll take a look at the livestock mission. So a very different mission from this one.